Hello, and welcome to my presentation of Turteltaub's phenomenon and the theory of the other. I hope you all have been having a great quarantine. I hope things haven't been too boring for you, and I hope you enjoy. The other is a prominent theme throughout literature that is not lost to time. John Turteltaub's 1996 film Phenomenon characterizes the theory of the other as described by readings of Dionysus and other historical literary analysis, as well as in poetry itself. Not only does he illustrate the resonance of that which resides within, he also utilizes the themes of nature and technology to emphasize the ramifications of suppressing an undeniable part of the soul. Turteltaub presents the theory of the other as an impalpable medium of this age, laced with the intimacy and meanings of centuries-old caution, to bear the question of truth itself and the fear associated. In Chapter 3 of Renan's Myth and Tragedy, Dionysus acts as the catalyst to the other, the imparter. He is the stranger, the other, the one perpetually arriving from across the sea. In the readings it says, "It is upon the fully socialized adult, the integrated citizen, the mother of a family sheltered in the conjugal home, that this God exerts his powers, introducing the unpredictable dimensions of the elsewhere into the very heart of daily life. It is those who are often oppressed by society, those who are controlled, who are not able to fully actualize the freedom of self that he inhabits. Dionysianism brings man into immediate contact with the otherness of the divine. He makes man become the other itself. Dionysus allows an eruption into public life, something extremely alien to the normal everyday world. It allows people to find the part of themselves that is suppressed deep down within them, something that you aren't able to express. The other can go over either well or unfavorably, most usually unfavorably. Dionysiac possession afforded access to a world of joy where the confining limitations of the human condition disappeared. So Dionysus allows people to access something beyond humanity. In the story of Phenomenon, George Malley sees a flash of light, and he begins to exhibit these extraordinary abilities, some of them that people only dream of, such as moving things with his mind, coming up with um, theories that don't exist before, um, reading entire books in a matter of seconds. But for the intents of this presentation, we are going to talk about his ability to access parts of his brain that extend his memory and his knowledge of the world. In the same way as the other, George Malley was enlightened by forces seemingly outside this world, whether in this case it would be God or aliens. His mind was expanded. It was allowed to access knowledge that the average man wouldn't even know to even think of. He indeed was able to provide access to a world of joy outside the limitations of normal human range. He also relates to the characteristic fusion of the divine of the other. He, throughout the whole movie, you think that he has this connection to aliens or God or something's giving this to him. Something that is not him, something outside of him is unlocking this part of his brain. With the other and its enlightened powers, it's a high approach to life. There is the possibility, perhaps an inevitability, that it would not be accepted because it is so other. As we find out, this is just the case with George. Because of oppression by society and fear of an unknown type of thing, he is rejected. Um, Second, I decided to analyze the duende. The duende relates to the other in the fact that no emotion is possible unless the duende comes. Um, the duende's arrival always means a radical change in forms. In the reading Deep Song and Other Prose, it brings to old plains unknown feelings of freshness, with the quality of something newly created, like a miracle, and it produces an almost religious enthusiasm. The duende itself is something other, something that cannot be forced or tangibly grasped. It is something that people continue to marvel at because of its power. Um, as we saw in class, um, the duende is like when it's in dance and art, it's something that seems otherworldly. It seems so raw and visceral that it almost seems impossible. In the readings, it says the duende is a real and poetic evasion of this world. It is something that could give lifeblood and art to bodies devoid of expression. It brings something into nothing, just as the other brings out the deepest parts of the human soul. The reading Deep Song and Other Prose also states that every art in every country is capable of duende. Spain especially embraces every aspect of the duende and is described as a country open to death. It says, a dead man in Spain is more alive as a dead man than any place else in the world. When he finds out that he is destined to die of a brain tumor, the same one that is inducing his enlightened state, George welcomes death. He understands that it is necessary and doesn't fight it. And he experiences his last days with joyful melancholy. He understands that on the other side of death, it won't be the end. That he experienced this state for a reason, and he's grateful for it. He's more alive because of his duende, his other, and everyone around him that loves him can see that. They know his life is extraordinary, even if this state was only for a few months out of his entire lifespan. In Spain, everything finds its final metallic value in death, and I believe that this is the same with George. His value was not less because he died and because he didn't impact as many people. His value, I believe, was even more amazing and more intense because of the people that he did influence, those closest around him. The duende also makes it easier to love and understand. One can be sure of being loved and understood through the duende. This is a quality that emulates the other in the fact that the other too possesses a person and evokes emotions that are otherwise left dormant. Throughout his new life, with his enlightenment, George expresses this type of patient love, a pure emotion that he continually expresses to those around him after his enlightenment. He helps those around him, or at least he tries to, and all he wants to do is share his knowledge. Yet the people of the town still fear him, reject him, just as with the other. And sometimes the duende is rejected when it is not recognized. Furthermore, the readings state that the duende draws near places where forms fuse together superior to visible expression. George himself is an immediate representation of this, kind of being better than human. He is characterized by a released part of the human brain, something amazing and new, something shunned and feared, just like all the attempts to introduce the other that we have read about. In the readings of the Marionette Theater, we also see aspects of the duende in the process of realizing grace and losing it. Grace, just as well as the duende and the other, it cannot be forced. It is natural and must come from the purest part of humanity. Natural responses are the beginning of grace. When the young man in the story became self-conscious and thought too much about his grace, it was gone. It says, as thought grows dimmer and weaker, grace emerges more brilliantly and decisively. As we surrender ourselves to the other and the duende, we are more and more embraced by it. The less we think about it, the less we try and and force it into our souls, the more it comes out. It also says, grace returns when knowledge has, as it were, gone through an infinity. Grace, the other, our duende, returns to us when we have undergone an infinity of the soul, something that cannot be described for fear of losing it entirely. There are several deadlocks found between the other and letting it out. In the struggle in finding and understanding the other, deadlocks arise. This is most readily seen in the struggle between the known versus the unknown. Because we cannot hold the power of something unknown, such as the other, such as George, it cannot be contained. In society, we are taught that we must be ruled by scheduling, planning, um, things that are tangible, things that we can change. But here, with the other, it cannot be changed. Therefore, it must be abolished. Um, by treating a feared person, thing, or idea as an object, it puts a distance between them and something that cannot be bridged. It allows there to be a jump over empathy. Um, by setting something on a shelf far away, people don't see the details. People don't see that someone like George is actually human. He is still autonomous. He still has feelings. Um, he was still just as confused as the rest of them. But he was other. He was different than them. And thus, they felt he needed to be eradicated. Um, there's this urge to control the thing we do not know, and in that we find the eternal struggle. Because the more we try to control something, the more we lose control. The more the townspeople tried to control George, the more they lost, and the more they turned in on each other and divulged into a mob mentality. Another deadlock that arises is the theory that nothing good can last. In the end of the movie, cancer ended up killing George. It ended his enlightened state, even though it was the source of his enlightenment. The other is enlightenment, but it can also be downfall. Even though George tried to help people and teach them what he knew, they still did not learn. They tried to get him locked up, experimented on. In the end, when he was dying, a doctor came to him and wanted to have his brain examined and cut out for science. Thus, the question presents itself. Are advancement and help enough? Are the things that the other and people like George and the Duende, is that enough to supplement humanity? Is it enough to want to try and embrace it? Unless every variable of a situation can be controlled, it can be deemed unstable and unsuitable and must be rejected. The other is an undefined variable. People try really hard to keep it in chains, yet it is still released through Dionysus and the Duende, through the other. And I do believe that it's worth it. I really do. Because in life, we only get a certain amount of time, and in that time, we have to make the best of it. People have always known the power of the other and that which is suppressed deep inside. There will always be an undefinable edge to humanity that even itself fears. The difference is that you can either choose to chain it down or let it out, embrace it. Each person has the choice to be part of the problem or part of the solution. I believe that everyone is chasing the other, no matter who they are or if they even realize it, even if they are trying to avoid it. and most often than not, it is not actualized. Because if all you do is chase it, you will never achieve it. It must be casually, organically, entirely embraced, not achieved. Is there a solution? Or are we all doomed to live in this deadlock forever? Only the people that embraced George, that trusted him and loved him in his entirety, were the people that felt his purpose. They were the ones that were changed. The woman he falls in love with during this time, Lacey, she never forgot his other, because she was a silent observer, willing to listen and embrace him for who he was. And in the end, she said she would love him for the rest of her life. I believe that this is the way that we should treat the other. Um, as a silent observer, um, willing to submit ourselves entirely to it, to embrace it, to live the best life that we can. Um, Thank you for listening, and I really do hope that you enjoyed. If you have any questions, you can email me at my school email address. Yeah, thank you.